Hi, it's Dwyer, gamblersadvisory.com, dwyersportsbetting.com. This is a private video, but remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. I don't believe the public fully appreciates just how far Shane Mosley's game has fallen off. I'm expecting him, even though these odds are pretty even, I'm expecting Shane Mosley to lose to Anthony Mundine in Australia. Right? Understand, the fight's at 154 pounds. Even if you were impressed with Mosley against Pablo Cano, that fight was at 147. When Mosley last fought at 154 pounds, he got destroyed by Saul Alvarez. So much so that would it surprise you if I told you that even though Saul Alvarez threw fewer punches than Mosley in the fight, because Saul Alvarez is lower volume, did you know that Saul Alvarez actually landed about 165 more punches than Shane Mosley? Think about that, right? Think about the lack of movement for that to happen. Think about how few punches Saul Alvarez landed against Floyd Mayweather. Well, Mosley was there to get hit. And what's really disappointing in both the Saul Alvarez and Floyd Mayweather fights that Mosley had was how easy it was to hit Mosley with a jab. Right? Understand, Mosley, for all of his talents, doesn't have good head movement. His head's pretty stationary, right? At times he can move away from you, but he has to move his whole body. He's stiff-necked. How stiff-necked? Saul Alvarez landed more than 40% of his jabs against Shane Mosley. Folks, that's a huge number. Let me just say that Floyd Mayweather landed 40% of his jabs against Shane Mosley. Now let's talk about Anthony Mundine. You know, reports of his demise are a bit overstated. Did you know that Anthony Mundine against Daniel Geale, and understand, Geale's the middleweight champion, right? Very hard fighter to fight. But against Daniel Geale, Anthony Mundine actually threw more than 400 jabs in the fight. Right? This fight's taking place in Mundine's backyard, the country of Australia. Here's what I expect to happen. I'm expecting Mundine to come out and throw a lot of jabs. That has to be an integral part of his strategy. Understand, Mundine's slightly bigger than Shane Mosley. Shane Mosley started the Pablo Cano fight a little bit slowly. Right? I believe Mosley's going to find himself at the end of Mundine's jab. That's going to bank rounds for Anthony Mundine. You can imagine. The crowd's going to be on his side to begin with. He's the hometown fighter. He's going to come out, he's going to have success pumping a jab. Let me point out that when Shane Mosley figures out how to get by the jab, if he figures out how to get by the jab, he's going to go up against one of the better defensive fighters in the sport of boxing. Anthony Mundine's career is predicated upon excellent defense. That's what Mundine does. He rolls with punches. He knows the angles. Understand, against middleweight Daniel Geale, right? And this fight's at 154, not 160. Mundine went the distance twice. There was a knockdown over the 24 rounds against Geale. It was Mundine getting the knockdown of Daniel Geale, who got up and then proceeded to lose the first fight. The second fight, Geale won. I disagree with Mundine. I think Gill won the second fight. But understand, Daniel Gill's never in danger of getting knocked out in that rematch. Right? That's Anthony Mundine's last fight. Mundine is still an elite fighter. We don't have to get nostalgic in talking about Mundine's defense. We can look at Mundine's defense right now. Understand, too, that Daniel Gill hits hard. How hard? Darren Barker got knocked down when Gill fought him. Barely made it to his feet. En route to his victory over Gill by questionable decision. Right? So Gill hits hard. But yet Mundine never had a Barker moment against Gill. Right? Because Mundine is excellent defensively. So here's the bet I'm recommending. I expect Anthony Mundine to win this fight. You're getting practically even money. That's a great payout. But I want you to hedge the play. Because Shane Mosley is really a slugger masquerading as a boxer. He does have a heavy punch. He destroyed Fernando Vargas at 154 with that punch. Right? In fact, it's a Shane Mosley right hand that gave Floyd Mayweather the most problems he's had for several years. If you recall, Mosley hits him with it. Mayweather's knees buckle. Later, Mosley hits him again with the same punch. Unfortunately for Mosley, they happen in the same round, and Mayweather, like Mundine, is a defensive genius. Right? Mayweather survived the round and then, quite frankly, beat up on Shane Mosley. How much so? Think about this. Over 12 rounds against Floyd Mayweather, Shane Mosley landed not only less than 10 punches a round, folks, he landed less than 100 punches the entire fight. As I said, his game has slipped. Let's talk about Pablo Cano. Understand that Pablo Cano is really a 140-pound fighter. It's only because he fought Paulie Malignaggi at 147. And in my opinion, beat Malignaggi, but that's another story. It's only because he fought Paulie Malignaggi at 147 that he was viewed as viable at 147. Let's talk about Pablo Cano's level of training. Understand that Pablo Cano got a shot to fight the champ at 147. Right? Paulie Malignaggi had the belt at that time. And this is a story that could only take place in boxing. Did you know that Pablo Cano failed to make weight? Even though the 147 was 7 pounds more than Pablo Cano usually weighs? Think about that. So I would argue that Pablo Cano isn't the most in shape fighter on the planet. That he's a guy who, quite frankly, young guy, hasn't yet mastered the idea of actually rigorously training and preparing for a fight. So as you look at the Pablo Cano, Shane Mosley fight, you're going to notice while Cano has his fitness, he's giving Shane Mosley all he can handle. It's when Pablo Cano starts to get winded around the 6th and 7th rounds that Shane Mosley turns that fight around. And even then, Pablo Cano comes back late. But it's too late. Now that's the opposite of a fighter like Anthony Mundine. Mundine's going to come in shape. That's what Mundine does. Right? He'll be in shape. This isn't a game for him. He's not going to miss weight and then, halfway through this fight get winded. That's not Mundine. He'll be tactically planning out what he's going to do for all 12 rounds. Right? If he dominates the first 6 rounds of this fight, as I think he's going to, trust me, he'll still be mentally sharp in round 7, 8, and 9. Mosley's only chance here is a puncher's chance. Mosley by KO right now, you're getting better than a plus 150. That's why the hedge is possible. Right? So I like Anthony Mundine to win the fight. That's what I believe is the most likely outcome. But I would hedge the play with Shane Mosley by KO. Now understand, the public's looking at this and they saw that Shane Mosley just won a decision in a title fight against Pablo Cano. I don't believe he can win a decision here. I think he's going to have a very hard time even touching Anthony Mundine. What I also want you to consider, and I know these are tasty odds, right? 10-1. What I want you to consider is the fact that Mundine might crack Mosley's code. If you look at Mundine fights, you're going to see that Mundine is adaptive reactive. He fights Garth Wood. He's dominating Garth Wood. Let's get real here. He gets hit with a lucky punch. He loses the first fight. Gets knocked out in the first fight. The second fight, Mundine dominates. So much so, he knocks Wood down twice late in that fight. In other words, Mundine is a counterpuncher who solves your code. Right? Then, later in fights, does better than he did early in fights. Now, I know Shane Mosley has never been knocked out, and I'm not recommending Mundine by KO. I'm not. But what we need to realize is Shane Mosley is now in his 40s. He's been hit hard in fights. He was hit very hard in that Canelo fight. He's fighting a guy who, quite frankly, has the skills to take advantage of his lack of head movement. Right? I believe the pacing of this fight is going to be the opposite of the pacing of the Pablo Cano Shane Mosley fight in the later rounds. There, Shane Mosley came on late, finished strong, looked rejuvenated. I think here, if you're betting this live round by round, if you see Mundine with the upper hand at the start of the 6th round, you need to assume that Mundine's going to have the upper hand for most of the latter part of the fight as well. Right? Mundine's the kind of guy who, if you hop in the ring, and if you're standing in front of him, and keep in mind, that's who Shane Mosley is. Just look at the CompuBox numbers off the Canelo fight. If you're standing in front of him, and if you don't have head movement, he's going to find you. The connect ratios, and in fairness to Mosley, Canelo and Floyd Mayweather are two of the more accurate fighters in the sport. But the connect ratios are staggering. Did you know that Canelo landed better than 1 punch for every 2 he threw against Shane Mosley? According to CompuBox, against Shane Mosley, he landed 52% of his punches. 52%. Floyd Mayweather against Mosley landed 44%. Understand, Shane Mosley didn't land more than 25% of his punches in either fight. He's there to be hit, folks. Anthony Mundine knows how to hit you. He's fighting Mundine in Mundine's backyard. He's the smaller man. Right? Mundine is still pumping a jab. Most recently, in his fight against Daniel Geale. I think Mundine wins this. I'd hedge the play with Mosley by KO. Thanks for stopping by.